In a recent Michigan rally, Donald Trump experienced an unusual moment. His own supporters openly expressed frustration with him, shouting, "Shut up," as he drifted off topic in a long-winded speech. This rally, intended to galvanize his base, instead laid bare the fractures even among his most loyal followers. In an event marked by gaffes, off-the-cuff rants, and controversial remarks, Trump appeared increasingly disconnected from the issues his audience cared about. This incident isn't just an isolated moment of unscripted awkwardness, but a sign of growing discontent within his base. His supporters have noticed the shift in Trump's tone and have grown frustrated by his repeated diversionary tactics, which often stray from meaningful policy discussions to bizarre anecdotes about his beautiful white skin or grudges against sound technicians. In this video, we'll analyze Trump's Michigan rally speech, unpack the crowd's reaction, and look at what these moments reveal about Trump's current standing with key demographics. This rally captured Trump not as a unifying figure, but as one struggling to engage with his supporters' concerns, raising the question of whether this waning connection could be a liability in his quest to reclaim the White House. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to reaching 5,000 subscribers, but we can't do it without you. So, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe right now. And if you're already subscribed, give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment to let me know your thoughts. Alright, let's dive right into it. 1. A chaotic start. Trump struggles to connect. The rally began with Trump attempting to criticize President Joe Biden, but his efforts quickly devolved into what some described as rambling. Attendees were visibly uncomfortable as Trump meandered through topics, discussing everything from sports teams he couldn't remember to grievances with a microphone setup. This lack of focus became so pronounced that a voice from the crowd interrupted him, shouting, "Shut up." A rare display of open frustration directed at a man often revered in these settings. Trump seemed momentarily thrown off by the heckling. Rather than refocusing, he continued his tirade, appearing increasingly disconnected from the concerns of everyday Americans. This inability to hold the crowd's attention reflects a deeper challenge for Trump. His usual approach of grievance-filled rhetoric no longer seems to resonate with the urgency and unity that once defined his base. 2. Floundering on local knowledge. At one point, Trump tried to connect with the Michigan crowd by referencing local sports teams, only to reveal he wasn't sure which team to mention. Caught off guard, he asked the audience for help, and someone finally reminded him of the Detroit Lions. This minor blunder underscored how out of touch he seemed, even with something as simple as knowing the local football team. For a candidate who prides himself on knowing the people, such a lapse was surprising and only added to the crowd's growing impatience. It wasn't just a gaffe. It was a moment that exposed a lack of personal connection with the region. Many Michiganders saw this as emblematic of Trump's broader disconnect from the issues that matter to them, like economic revitalization and job growth in manufacturing, a far cry from the culture war talking points he tends to focus on. 3. Bashing Puerto Ricans and alienating Florida voters. Adding fuel to the fire, Trump began discussing his waning support among Puerto Rican voters, a group increasingly influential in swing states like Florida. Trump's derogatory comments and policies targeting Puerto Rican communities have led to an erosion of support, with recent polls indicating an 85 to 90% opposition rate among Puerto Rican voters in Florida. Rather than addressing why he's lost their support, Trump continued his divisive rhetoric, seemingly disregarding the cultural and economic contributions of Puerto Ricans. This attitude only alienates Latino voters further, a key demographic that Republicans have traditionally struggled to engage effectively. 4. A vendetta against the venue's staff. During the speech, Trump turned his attention to the technical crew handling the sound system, complaining that his voice didn't sound right. He instructed his team not to pay the contractors, sparking laughter from the crowd. "They'll say, Trump doesn't pay his bills, but I pay bills when people do a good job," he quipped. This complaint may seem trivial, but it's consistent with Trump's history of refusing to pay vendors and contractors. For a crowd already frustrated with the lack of substance in his speech, this petty dig only reinforced the perception that Trump was more concerned with personal grievances than with pressing issues facing the nation. 5. False claims of a U.S. economic depression. One of Trump's most alarming statements came when he claimed the United States was in a depression. This bold assertion is simply false. Despite inflationary challenges, the U.S. economy remains one of the strongest in the world, with low unemployment and ongoing growth. His attempt to paint the economy in such dire terms not only conflicts with reality, but also raises questions about his grasp of basic economic indicators. The crowd's lukewarm reaction suggests that even his most ardent supporters recognize the disconnect between Trump's rhetoric and the real state of the economy. For some, the gap between his exaggerated claims and reality may be eroding trust in his ability to accurately assess and address economic challenges. 6. Racially charged comments about his beautiful white skin. In a particularly bizarre moment, Trump referenced his own skin color, describing it as beautiful white and expressing regret that he didn't have time to get a tan. This remark was as jarring as it was inappropriate, playing into racial undertones that have frequently marred Trump's public statements. Such remarks highlight the divisive language Trump has used throughout his political career. His fixation on identity politics, coupled with his frequent disparagement of minority groups, only deepens racial divisions. For a candidate aiming to broaden his base, especially among Black and Latino voters, such statements are counterproductive. 7. Isolationist views on foreign aid. Trump then pivoted to foreign policy, reiterating his stance against providing aid to Ukraine and suggesting that, if elected, he would prioritize America first to the exclusion of international alliances. While his base may resonate with isolationist rhetoric, critics argue that such an approach would destabilize global alliances and embolden adversarial nations. This stance reveals Trump's limited understanding of geopolitics. His unwillingness to support Ukraine not only alienates NATO allies but also contradicts America's long-standing commitment to countering authoritarianism. This ideological pivot, under the guise of nationalism, may appeal to certain factions but poses risks to America's global standing. 8. Targeting allies while praising adversaries. Trump's anti-globalist stance extended to his view on allies, whom he characterized as worse than our enemies in terms of economic exploitation. This worldview reflects Trump's simplistic, transactional approach to diplomacy, where alliances are weighed only by their immediate financial benefits. Such statements not only erode trust among allies but also embolden America's adversaries, who may perceive Trump's disdain for multilateral agreements as a vulnerability. While some of his base may cheer this rhetoric, it risks alienating moderate voters who value America's role as a global leader. 9. Jabs at Kamala Harris and other opponents. In his usual style, Trump threw insults at Vice President Kamala Harris, calling her stupid and suggesting she's incapable of meaningful contributions. Such comments reveal Trump's tendency to denigrate women and minorities, a habit that has alienated independent and undecided voters. Harris, a high-profile woman of color, has become a frequent target in Trump's speeches. His continued attacks may solidify his base but risk backfiring as independent voters grow weary of the divisive rhetoric and seek leaders who focus on policy, not personal attacks. 10. Trump's aging image. Out of touch with seniors. Trump attempted to connect with senior citizens, claiming he feels sharper now than ever. However, his focus on age only highlights his own. This focus reflects an unintentional vulnerability, as Trump's repeated references to feeling young may only remind voters of his advanced age. With key battleground states like Pennsylvania seeing a shift among senior voters, many are turning away from Trump's divisive, age-centric rhetoric, which lacks substantive solutions to issues that matter to older Americans, like healthcare and Social Security. Trump's rally in Michigan was intended to showcase his connection with the heartland, yet it revealed a troubling disconnect with his audience. His rambling, grievance-laden speech, filled with gaffes, Off-color jokes and petulant complaints highlighted the widening gap between Trump's rhetoric and the real concerns of American voters. As he stumbled through topics, hecklers and frustrated supporters made their discontent known, challenging his narrative and diminishing his aura of invincibility. Trump's divisive approach, alienating key demographics, doubling down on isolationist policies, and making off-putting racial remarks, isn't just ineffective, it may prove costly in the upcoming election. The Michigan rally exemplifies a campaign that has lost its footing, struggling to balance fiery rhetoric with meaningful policy discourse. If Trump hopes to win back the White House, he must bridge the growing divide between his rhetoric and reality, or risk losing the trust of even his most loyal supporters.